Audio Jungle.
Thank you for having me. Each of us here today was born, or at least that's what they tell us, on a certain day and time not too long ago. Some of you were born to homes or families that had an idea of the kind of newborn they were expecting, as far as physical characteristics at least. Others were born to homes or families that had no idea what your physicals would look like. In both instances, there was a gender code ready and waiting to legislate your arrival. This code, commonly known as the gender binary, is a carefully designed system that allocates newborns into one of two opposite categories: male and female, or boy and girl. The baby's physical sex characteristics at birth determine which category they are assigned to. Much like that famous line from the 90s movie, Kindergarten Cop, boys have a penis and girls have a vagina. The code comes with a set of rules and expectations in terms of roles and behaviors. These are cultivated and nurtured on the home level or wherever the baby is born. Boys wear blue and are groomed to fulfill a masculine expression. Much like that old adage, boys don't cry, well, this means they wear the pants, literally. And they are raised to become men that will head households as fathers and husbands. Girls wear pink, and yes, they are allowed to cry. They are groomed to fulfill a more feminine expression and will grow to become women who deputize the head as mothers and wives. Of course, this is a generalization, as households and communities differ. But the universal trend tends to lean towards the need for roles based on the gender code, that boys wear blue and girls wear pink, and that's that on that. So while our homes, communities, and society is made up of blues and pinks, the color spectrum is variant. The distribution of colors on the spectrum is determined by light and how it reflects on a particular object. Interestingly, the primary colors of the visible spectrum are said to consist of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. No pink. So while there are many variations to the spectrum, the home recognizes the blue and pink and maps those onto the newborn the minute they are born so that they can determine what the path they ought to walk in life should look like. A boy or a blue is born with a penis, identifies as a male, with a sexual attraction to a female. A girl or a pink is born with a vagina, expresses in the feminine, with a sexual attraction to a male. So what happens if the baby is not a blue or a pink? This would mean the baby is not aligned to the roles and characteristics that have been determined for a blue or a pink. While predominantly physical, these could also be innate, as is the case with gender identity and sexual orientation. So while the blues and pinks are supposed to be opposite and have to attract, over time, they recreate their own blues and pinks, and that is how the cookie is supposed to crumble with transgenerational blues and pinks. Easy, right? So, what happens if the baby's physical characteristics are not explicitly a blue or pink at birth? Scientists refer to these people, or these amazing beings, as intersex, meaning they are born with the sex and or reproductive characteristics that do not fit the gender code of male and female. It is estimated that 1 in 500 South Africans is born intersex. For the purposes of today, let's call them oranges. Oranges defy the gender code at the moment of birth, as they do not tick the blue or the pink box. So this means that there's no clear convention in terms of expected roles and behaviors, as these boxes simply do not exist in our homes, communities, or society. Sadly, acceptable medical practice has seen the attempt at erasing oranges. This is done through surgical intervention on the newborn's genitalia to bring them in line with a pink or a blue. In certain communities, oranges are terminated at birth because they defy the convention of being human, which has been established according to the gender code. I'm sure you can see the problem here. Because of the gender code, oranges are not able to assert themselves in the spaces they are born into. I mean, just imagine that you were the only orange in your family or community and everyone else spoke pink and blue. An innate sense of gender identity is said to develop in children between the ages of 3 and 5. This is when they become aware of the subtle and not so subtle differences in gender expectations in their immediate surroundings. So what happens to a baby that ticks the blue but develops a gender identity that ticks the pink? For the purposes of today, let's call them yellows. Who knew gender could be so colorful? Yellows disrupt the gender code because they defy the norm of boy wears blue and girl wears pink. Their gender identity and or expression does not correlate with the sex characteristics of the box they've been squashed inside. A yellow could tick the blue box, but develop a gender identity that ticks the pink, or neither. It is also possible that a yellow does not tick either the blue or pink boxes, regardless of the gender they have been assigned at birth. I would know this because I am a yellow. Around the age of 7, I became aware that my conditioned expressions were a far cry from my internal preferences. It was also around this time where I began to question a lot in terms of what was happening on the home level and assigned genders and roles. I would frolic around the home in an unbuttoned shirts and shorts combo, insisting that I play father or uncle when playing house with my cousins. It worked to my advantage that my grandparents were more lenient in their golden years, and so they allowed me certain liberties on the home level. This was not the same in company, though. Early on, I realized that the preservation of my grandfather's image in community was of utmost importance. And so this meant dresses at school and at church. When the other young boys were taught the skill of slaughtering a sheep as part of their enculturation, I confronted my grandfather, insisting I be taught same. He eventually obliged, and soon I was a regular whenever preparations for a feast were underway. So while I had lucid moments of utility and liberty on the home level, I could not draw this parallel in my external communities. And while I felt myself becoming beyond my family's socialization, I did not have the language to articulate who I was and who I knew myself to be. And so the rigid language that comes with the gender binary would hold me hostage for the next 21 years. My body was also developing at a rapid rate at that. And this also caused me to be pushed deeper and deeper into the margins of my home, my community, and my society. Fast forward a few years later, the dawn of the new millennium. While everyone was panicked about the Y2K bug that would see the collapse of global coded systems, I left home for Cape Town, seeking to exist beyond another type of coding, the code that kept me hostage in the gender binary. It was only at the age of 28 where I found the language through Dr. Google to begin the journey of weaving a tapestry that is reflective of the variants of yellow that exist within me. This was after numerous attempts at taking my life, as I was always trying to silence the voice in my head that screamed, "You are a yellow." And so 2 years shy of 30, I began my hormone replacement therapy. This time I had a choice in terms of who I was and who I was becoming. Part of this journey has seen me successfully motivate a medical aid to pay for my gender-affirming care. The first known transgender man in South Africa to get this medical aid breakthrough. I am a transgender man. I was assigned pink at birth, and I identify as and am a man. Now, this journey has taught me the importance of individual autonomy, but mostly the importance of the home piloting the decoding gender agenda. The ownership of children is detrimental to their well-beings. This comes with pressures to conform to values, structures, cultures, and norms they may or may not align with. The diction of boy wears blue and girl wears pink presupposes that everyone is either or. If the home was not coded as blue or pink, I could have found the language to become the yellow I am much, much sooner. Remember, there is a spectrum of color, and by choosing to legitimize only the blue and pink means we miss the opportunity for the other colors to shine. We miss the yellows, the oranges, the violets, the greens, because we remove their agency at birth. Now, our country bears the scars of a different form of coding. A coding that saw the different shades of brown as being inferior to the perceived alpha that was white. This coding saw our rivers flow with the many, many shades of brown, and the only reason why their blood was flowing in those rivers is because they did not take the box of legitimate human despite being born that way. The deconstruction of this code began a little over 25 years ago. And this resulted in a supreme law that has been established and entrenched into our country's laws, which protects all regardless of color or shading. And part of this law advocates for the right to non-discrimination based on gender, sex, and sexual orientation. And it is within that supreme law, where the preamble so aptly asserts in part, we, the people of South Africa, believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity, and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. We are the people that make up the homes that form part of communities and ultimately the fabric that is South African society. And we are the people that need to cultivate these fundamentals on the home level. It is important for the narrative to change on the home level. The reality is, nobody is born male or female. Nobody is born a blue or a pink. There is a spectrum of color, and the autonomy to become whichever one chooses should be left to them. If you take anything away from this yellow, let it be this. The gender code removes personal agency, it erases people's identities, and the deconstruction of this code is the responsibility of the home. And the home is you, and the home is me. Thank you.